So I think one of the things which people have obviously been struggling with during lockdown is kind of the maintenance of good routine and good habits.
Mm,
Obviously, with the guidance that we've been given, people have kind of taken that a little too literally to
mm,
stay inside and therefore kind of neglected kind of important lifestyle factors like actually going outside, remaining active, getting exposure to daylight. And I think people possibly don't understand quite how important some of these factors and habits are, and how they will actually really impact many different areas of your life
mm.
and really benefit your health, your productivity, and everything else in many ways. Yeah, I think just kind of starting things off, I think something as simple as kind of actually getting outside and getting exposure to daylight, and just kind of staying in the house all day when it comes kind of working from home and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's an absolute really, really key point there, actually, because something I try to, ensure my clients do is get exposed to daylight first thing in the morning. And so it's such a small thing, but it comes with so many benefits. Um, before that, we need to strip it back a little and understand that actually this sort of new routine people in lockdown where you spend all day indoors, it's in place because it's easier and it requires a lot less effort just to simply sit around indoors all day. Now, understandably, most people are working from home, and so they need to, sit down and spend their time indoors. But it's about before work, after work. Ask yourself, what are you doing? And so it's a lot easier to wake up and just go straight to the laptop and start work. It requires less effort. So I think the first important thing to understand is just accepting the fact that some of these beneficial habits just require a little bit more effort. If you accept that fact, it automatically already becomes easier to do. So, there's an important point that people might say, well, I don't have time to go outside first thing in the morning, but, you used to travel to work. So that time that you used to allocate to travel to work can now be allocated to getting outside and going for a walk first thing in the morning. Um, but again, it's easier to go to bed a little bit later, wake up a bit later, and just start work. So the first habit we could establish is going to bed a bit earlier and getting up a bit earlier. From there, you're going to allow yourself this time to be able to go out and get for a walk. But what about the people who say, well, I truly do not have time to go for a walk in the morning? Well, okay, let's not force it, because if we force it, it's just going to cause more stress and more anxiety. And that's going to probably have worse effects on your health than just missing a bit of daylight in the morning is going to have. So instead, it's as simple as, well, everyone has a morning coffee, right? Well, why not just go stand outside whilst drinking your morning coffee? Everyone can do that. Everyone can literally step outside, drink their coffee, and just get exposed to daylight. Again, from a lifestyle point of view, it's something everyone can do. But looking beyond that, looking at about how that's going to affect things like stress is really, really important, because if you're waking up and the first thing you're doing is exposing yourself to this huge work stress, then that's not good for stress management. That's just stress, stress, stress all day. Whereas if you wake up, get exposed to daylight, sort of relax, drink your coffee, then you straight away you're getting exposed to this relaxed environment, this better environment. And then when you do go to work, guess what? You're going to be more productive because you're not stressed. You're ready to go. The light itself is going to help to wake you up. It's going to help to kickstart your circadian rhythm and all your bodily processes, so to speak. And you're going to be more productive, less stressed, and you're going to have a better workflow. So there's just so many benefits to such a small habit of just getting outside first thing in the morning. And like I said, there's a couple options. Use the time you would have previously had to travel to work to go for a walk. And if you don't have time, really don't have time to do that, simply just stand outside whilst you're drinking your morning coffee. It's something that everyone can do. And the last option, if you're absolutely desperate and have no other option, just stick your head out a window. It might look a bit silly from the outside perspective, but
It gets the
again, that's
job done.
something. Yeah, it gets the
Yeah,
job done. It's something that everyone can do. Yeah. So,
yeah,
you
for
know,
sure,
the
for sure. Yeah, I think there's quite a few things to kind of touch on from there. I think for starters, obviously, the first thing to kind of establish is kind of the idea of effort, and the idea that doing things which is just easier is something that which will come a little more naturally during a time period like this.
mm,
And kind of therefore leading on from that, it doesn't necessarily even need to be a drastic increase in effort to change your routine to something new. Because going back to what you were saying about kind of taking the time that you were traveling to work, your routine can almost even just go back to something that you are used to and something which has been sustainable for your life previously, but still actually something which has facilitated better habits which one would do well to keep in their life. So as you were saying, you know, people taking the time that they would have taken to travel to work to actually still go outside and get some fresh air, you know, particularly now as we start to move into the summer months, when people may not have actually been able to really do that due to it still being pitch black outside. Now, as we start to move into a time period where, you know, daylight is increasing throughout the day, that's much more feasible now. So going back to, you know, a lifestyle and routine which you have done before, and therefore, you know, it doesn't take tons more effort, still actually potentially yields those benefits. And as you touched on, there are levels to this. You know, it doesn't have to be, if you really don't have the time, it doesn't need to be, you know, go outside first thing in the morning for a walk and kind of all the optimal physiological impacts that they may have on things like circadian rhythm and the subsequent impacts on sleep and productivity and kind of your bodily functions and waking up and everything. Sure, there are optimal ways to do that, as you touched on. But with that being said, there's still levels to this. And just because one can't hit that top level and do things most optimally doesn't mean that nothing can be done, and people should still kind of strive to kind of, you know, meet these habits in a way that kind of still floats with their lifestyle.
Yeah, because it, as you rightly said there, it comes down to, you know, lifestyle. You know, these are lifestyle habits, so they have to be sustainable to your actual lifestyle. You know, in the winter months, I do have clients who start work at 8 and it doesn't get light until say 9 or 8:30 or whatever, but they physically cannot get outside first thing in the morning because it's not light when they have to start work. So it's about making it fit their lifestyle. Well, you know, everyone has, by a legal requirement, has a lunch break. So let's get some light exposure at your lunch break, if that's the case. So it's not about forcing it, as I've said. It's about making it fit your lifestyle and just doing your best where you can. And at the end of the day, no matter what, it's got to be sustainable. So make it fit. And the other thing I want to touch on, well, people might say, well, I don't really have a morning routine. So how can I make this fit for my lifestyle? Well, it's important to understand that, you know, it's human nature to have a routine. Even if you don't realize you don't have a routine, it is human nature. You do pretty much the same thing day in, day out, even if you don't realize it. You know, there'll be small things throughout the day which you do differently, but on the whole, you probably eat the same time, pretty similar each day. You'll probably I don't know, have your same sort of relaxed time at the same time each day. Is that you do have a structure, even if you don't realize it. So the point is you've got to kind of fit in these good habits into that routine almost as naturally as you do everything else. Because when you do that, when it becomes natural, when it becomes second nature to do, that's when that effort actually starts to go away and it becomes easier to do. So it is about accepting it first. It might take effort to acquire this new routine or acquire these new habits. But once they are established as habits, they become automatic. They become second nature. They become what you do naturally every single day. And so first thing is accept its effort. Once you've accepted that, that already makes things easier. Second thing is make it fit into your lifestyle and make it sustainable in that sense. And that's really, really important. But again, these things you might say, well, I'm only missing a bit of daylight first in the morning. It's not that big a deal. But actually, you know, as we've kind of a little bit touched on, it has so many different impacts in so many different areas of your life and so many different areas of health that it makes a huge difference. You know, it affects things like your bowel, like this light exposure I'm talking about, affects things like your bowel movements, your sleep quality, your stress levels, your digestion as a whole, your energy levels, and all of that sort of thing. And if you don't give a shit about your health, which not understandably, but I understand that some people do, then and you just care about working hard and being successful, well, you've got to think how it can actually have a positive effect on your productivity in terms of the day, on your work efficiency. Again, people say I don't have time, but actually, if you're more efficient, you make time work for you and not against you. And so therefore, you do have time to do these types of things. Your quality of work is going to go up, and therefore you're more likely to be successful. So there is a benefit for everyone to do this, regardless of what you want to get out of it. There is still a benefit for everyone to do this.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point, because I don't think people see this as kind of a bigger picture and kind of a puzzle where all the pieces start to kind of fit together. As you kind of mentioned, people won't kind of consider how something as simple as daylight will have an impact on, you know, your sleep, your digestion, on everything. How you can kind of fit all of that into your lifestyle. You know, think about kind of being a bit active kind of after you've had lunch on your lunch break. You know, obviously, as you mentioned, everyone has a lunch break, so you know that might be the earliest convenience that you get for daylight in a day for some people. But obviously, with that being said, you know, the impacts on digestion that could have on all sorts of health metrics, and hopefully that already starts kind of bringing an idea of how this is something that really does kind of fit together as a puzzle, and why it's so important these, you know, good habits are built and maintained, even more importantly. People not understanding how these things can influence something like productivity. And again, you know, even looking at things from kind of a more physiological perspective and circadian rhythm, and you know, actually how this will help wake you up and actually do things better. You know, it becomes very popular, especially in kind of hustle culture, to, you know, work while others sleep and this and that. But as you rightly said, you know, can you actually make time work better for you by, you know, looking after yourself and implementing these habits to actually be more productive at that time and be more awake and have a health which is going to facilitate these things better? Or are you just going to try and kind of hope that these things work for you by fluke, which it may for some, but for the average person, maybe not so much.
Yeah. And you bring up an excellent point there, because, you know, I mentioned before, obviously everyone, whether they realize it or not, has a routine, right? But I was more talking about like sort of a psychological routine there, right? But in terms of light exposure and your circadian rhythm, that is more of a physiological routine that your body has. So again, this is where it affects things like your bowel movements. So, you know, you should be pretty regular in terms of bowel movements each day. But again, if you only care about your work, then your circadian rhythm is affecting your routine in terms of your brain's productivity, your brain's alertness, your brain's readiness. So if you're more alert, more ready to work, again, quality of work is going to go up. And that is affected by things like your circadian rhythm. You know, circadian rhythm affects things like your sleep and wake times. So if you're naturally waking up at a certain time, then your brain wakes up. It goes, okay, well, in 30 minutes to an hour's time, I'm going to be ready to work, because that's what I do every single day. And therefore, you know, you're in this routine where you're being more productive because of something so small as getting this light, which you can think of as like a message, as like a signaling message to tell your body to start 100%. And get ready, and everything just to work. So again, it's just the difference that light exposure can have on both your physiological and your psychological routine is massive. And again, it's not about forcing it. It's just about getting in, you know, some daylight exposure when you can, that fits into your lifestyle. But everyone can, like say, you can do it in your lunch break if that's your earliest convenience, or even if you need to, you can do it after work. Now, obviously, it's not ideal, but we don't live in a perfect world. We live in
life gets in the way.
Life gets in the way. You live in your own little world, so you've got to make it fit how you live your life. You know, and it's not about being perfect; it's about being consistently good, and that's the key aspect here.
Yeah, I hope that can kind of start bringing some idea of how people can kind of look at this as a bigger picture and understand why these habits are so important to them.
Yeah, and people think, again, because the only habit we've really touched on here is daylight exposure, right? And people always think, like, I mean, that's just one habit. That the amount of habits that you do every single day that you don't realize is massive, because again, habits are natural, they're second nature, they're what you do automatically, right? They structure your day, they structure your things over the long term. But so we've only touched on one habit here. Imagine if you had all you had like 5 good habits every single day, imagine how much better your day would be. But just come back to the daylight thing. People think, well, why are you talking about that? I just want to know what I should eat and how I should exercise, not realizing that, again, how much of a difference daylight exposure can make to your health, to your performance, to your routine, to sleep quality, which then can have a knock-on effect on things like nutrition and hunger and cravings. So most people think, oh, getting light is just some hippie thing that doesn't really matter, but actually, hopefully, as we've slightly touched on here, it has such a huge difference to just every area of your life. And I hope you can start to realize that and realize the importance of getting outside for daylight exposure. It is so important. It really is.
Yeah, I think that was actually a really good way to kind of to lead on from what we were talking about. And first off, kind of going broader with it, and even kind of looking at kind of the impacts on exercise and nutrition through kind of cravings and stuff. Because as you pointed out, that will then have an impact on your sleep, which has an impact on one's performance, on everything. I think sleep for most people is massively overlooked anyway. But again, hopefully that kind of starts to show how this bigger picture can be looked at, and how these are all just parts of a puzzle that can be put together.
It's the small things that add up. Again, it really is big picture stuff. Don't miss the forest for the. I was going to. It's probably not the best metaphor, so I'll leave that one out actually. But it is big push. It's the small things that add up. All right, here's a better metaphor. It's like if you save the pennies, the pounds will make themselves. Right? Yeah. That's the best way to put it. So it's these small little habits that you do every single day that add up massively over time. And again, this one habit of daylight, how that influences just everything else, is going to make such a big difference. If again, it's kickstart things like your digestion. Well, if you're not digesting food very well, energy is going to be low. If energy is low, performance is going to suck. Performance sucks, you're not going to get the results you're after. It has this knock-on effect, and everything connects. And again, it's going to affect things like stress levels. And again, too much stress is the destroyer of health, and you're not going to get good gains from that. So it just the main point I want to get across here is that it might seem insignificant, but actually it has a huge significance on all areas of life. It really does. And as I said, it doesn't matter what your goal is, it's going to have a beneficial effect on your goal to get some daylight exposure every single day. No doubt.
And and as you kind of mentioned earlier, going back to what you were saying, that we pretty much only just touched on one habit here, but even if we consider every kind of habit which could potentially have kind of taken a turn for the worse during lockdown, again, kind of looking at things that like mindfulness in terms of eating more mindfully, taking time to kind of manage stress, all these things which can really have negative impacts on kind of every aspect of your life if left kind of unmanaged, and you kind of don't look at that. These things, as you said, kind of the pennies will make the pounds when we kind of address these things, but also kind of looking at negatively losing those pennies and losing those pounds in terms of kind of the negative impact on your life as well. So I think what people should consider how well things are starting to line up for them at the moment, because obviously now with on our way out of lockdown, we are now told that it's going to be okay to go outside and socialize with people. We're now told that this is going to open and this is going to open. Things that are starting to go back to normal, hopefully continue going that way. And then combined with that, heading into a time of year where daylight is going to be more abundant. Now is the perfect time to actually potentially start undoing any wrongs which may have kind of started from lockdown, and line yourself up to kind of emerge better than you went in.
Yeah, because that's circle back round, because now is the perfect time, because it's so easy to stay in this new routine that you found, because again, it's an easy routine. Like, again, there's nothing hard about sitting down at your desk working followed by sitting on the sofa watching TV. There's nothing hard about that. It's very easy, very comfortable to do. So now's the perfect time to put in a little bit of effort, and again, accepting there's going to be some effort to form or get back into a better routine, again, that still fits your lifestyle, so that when we are fully out of lockdown, you're not still in a lockdown routine when we're not in lockdown anymore, essentially. And again, that's only going to have beneficial, positive effects on your health, on the quality of life, on your happiness, everything like that. So it just makes perfect sense now to start now to make small changes, especially because you've got to consider these things don't happen overnight. These things take time to form and to come into place. And we're not trying to change everything at once either. So we change a little bit, we make it, we cement that change, then we change something else and we cement that change. So it takes time. So if you start now, hopefully by the time we're fully out lockdown, you'll be back into a much better routine that fits your lifestyle, that makes everything better everything in your life better, that makes work more productive and makes time work for you, not against you, etc., etc. So it just makes sense to start now, essentially. Yeah.
For sure. And I think as a good kind of final note to kind of encompass everything, as you kind of touched on the importance of kind of smaller changes and kind of incrementally improving these habits, as you said, it makes it more sustainable. And just over time, you've eventually built up this good repertoire of good habits that create a much more kind of productive and, healthier and a lifestyle that's better for you. That will just kind of see improvements all across the board.
Yeah, and I talk about effort, and it is effort to get started. But if these habits work for you and not against you, guess what? It's going to be less effort than the whole. Yeah. So again, it's about thinking long term. It's like thinking, let's put a bit of effort in now so that it saves us a lot of effort later. It just makes more sense to start now for that reason. So yeah, that was literally just a small, and I really mean small, introduction into why habits are so beneficial, and more so because we talked about daylight mostly there, why just ensuring you get some daylight exposure every single day really can have a massive difference on your life as a whole.